Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Todd Clint's SharePoint podcast number 347, recorded live Monday, July 31st, 2017. I am your host and technically inept today, Todd Clint, and trying to help me through my technical struggles and being of no help whatsoever, Shane Young. Take it away.
Thank you very much. Well, this is really just part of my protest that the show is still just named the Todd Clint Netcast. I refuse to help until we get a new name. So that's it.
Yep. So those of you that don't listen to heavy metal, you're missing out. But there's a band called Dokken, named after a guy, Don Dokken. And he and the guitar player have always been mad because George Lynch, the guitar player, thinks he's the reason everybody loves the band, but his name's not in the band name. And so this is a legendary thing. Like, he gets mad and he'll point at the Dokken sign on stage. So Shane and I are at that thing now where, Shane's mad because the show's named after me. But I'm the star. And so what else are you going to do? So we'll see about that. But if you want to contact me, if you want to reach out to the brains and the good looks behind the show, you can email me, todd@toddclint.com. I'm on the web, toddclint.com, Twitter, Todd Clint, Instagram, Todd Clint, all that business all over the internet. Shane, on the off chance, on the unlikely event somebody wants to reach out to you, what do they do?
Oh, good old Twitter is always your friend. @Shane's Cows, right? Because I must like cows. I like hamburgers. I like beef. All those fun things. So
yeah,
that's what I do.
Getting whipped with leather belts, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So we're out there. And you're on YouTube. I'm on YouTube. YouTube.com/ToddClintNetcast, or you can go to ToddClint.com/YouTube and it'll jump you over there. But that's all that. So for production notes, we got out last week's episode 346. That's the one that Shane ran and I called in from the northern reaches of Minnesota, or South Canada as it seemed. The audio was not great, but not horrible. I mean, it did sound like I was calling into a talk show and all that. But it went pretty well besides that. I think next time, Shane and I kind of talked about it, I think a little bit on the podcast, maybe afterwards, about trying to use Skype, but use audio-only Skype, if that comes up again, and doing it that way. But I think it went pretty well. And the other thing, so Shane, you heard about it here at the beginning. Shane's been kind of whiny. He feels unloved and unappreciated. And for good reason. He is indeed unloved and unappreciated. But he's thinking we need to rename this thing and work his name into this somehow. So if you've got ideas on how to do that, or if your idea is that Shane should shut the hell up, that is also a valid idea. So let us know.
Such a nice guy there. Yeah. And I think the thing, though, right, so when it comes to names, we'd really like to know, or at least I would like to know, and Todd's not smart enough to know what he needs to know yet, but one of the things we have to kind of solve for is discoverability. So, it's real easy to say it should be called Shane and Todd Talk Tech or something stupid like that. But, is that going to stop future people from finding it? So I think one of the questions that I would have for you guys, and, feel free to tweet us, email us, tell us your responses. But with a name like that, how do you guys find stuff? I mean, would you literally go into your favorite podcasting app and type in SharePoint? Is that how you expect to find us? Or because we don't ever talk about SharePoint, that's beyond the conversation. But, when we're trying to think of SEO for the podcast, we'd love your feedback on what type of words would be how you would find us if you didn't already know what a great show this was.
Yeah, and I guess, you and I were talking about this before the show. What didn't occur to me is right now it's called Todd. So in iTunes, it doesn't have the name SharePoint because I was afraid I was going to get sued. But I think those days are gone. But right now it's just got my name in it. So if anybody's looking for it, they would. I don't think it's got SharePoint in the name anymore. But we would also have a description. So all the podcasts have a description of the podcast. So things like Azure and SharePoint and Office 365 would be in there. So maybe that's how you would find it.
Yeah, I think that's really the biggest question, right? Because if that's true, as long as it's in the description, they'll find us the way that they need to find us. Then we just go with a generic, Shane and Todd hate each other and talk about tech, something very descriptive like that. It just makes it easy, because I don't want to spend a bunch of time naming it, but I would like us to find a new name, right? So we get a new logo, and then go get this listed on Google and TuneIn and all those other crazy places. We found out that we really should be listed to have any chance of ever getting a real audience view number.
Yeah. Yep. So Dave Aykroyd in the chat room suggests a title: many good tech things about podcast. Many good Tech Things podcast, you won't believe number 3. I am that close to just calling it and saying,
I'm sold. This Dave guy, he just kind of shows up. I kind of assume it's really my mom's secret identity or something. Because, Dave always is rooting for the Shane guy in his comments here. And that title's perfect. I'm sold. Someone's going to have to talk me out of that one.
That's the front run right now. Christopher in the chat room, he's mentioning that he signed up for this one. And then Michael, I forget the guy's last name in Germany, but that one's in German. So, apparently Christopher's not fluent in German. So,
yeah. And, and really though, right, if we were going to put a title in there, right, it'd probably have to be Office 365. But I just feel like we're selling ourselves short, right? Because probably 10% of our content actually is about SharePoint or Office 365 these days. Whether we hit Azure, we hit PowerShell, we hit AD, we hit Teslas. We talk about microwave spying on you. So I think getting to a more generic name like Tech Talk or something of that is probably very generic, but more in line with kind of setting setting expectations correctly that we're just going to talk about whatever we want.
Yeah, whether it's in the notes or not. So jump in there right now. Dave Aykroyd's got the leading contender. So we'll see from there. All right, topics. Let's go ahead and jump on those. And we spent so much time fighting the audio. I don't think we looked through that. So I like your first one there, Shane, about, I assume that's from DEF CON. I haven't read the post itself, but is that what it's from?
No. So this is a casino. Oh, I forget where it's at now because it's been a week since I posted it. But there was a casino that was, hacked, and what it turned out to find out was they were using the Internet of Things. The fish tank, the aquarium there had sensors for the oxygen level and all that in the water and the heaters and things. And so the bad guys attacked their aquarium, hacked their aquarium, and then used that to jump on their network and attack the actual rest of the gaming operation. So it's once again, right, the whole idea that somebody hacking your microwave, but there you go. Casino was hacked because they had a fish tank that had a heater that was on the internet.
Yeah. So last week, because with the day that we recorded this, I spent 11 and a half hours driving. I listened to a lot of podcasts that day, and one of them was a TED talk on hidden things. And one of the things that they talked about was a guy who did a TED talk on eavesdropping with a bag of potato chips. And essentially what this guy had figured out was for 30 years we've known if you point a laser at a window and somebody's talking inside of that window, you can pull the laser thing out. Everybody knows how to do that. What he's figured out how to do is using consumer cameras and things like that, focus on something inside of a room and pick up the vibrations of the sound off of that thing on the picture and pull the audio out of it. So he had a Doritos bag sitting in a room and a camera outside of the room, and he was talking, and the camera could pick up the minute vibrations on the Dorito bag and pull his audio out of it. And wow, that is just amazing. So think of all the things we have the cameras in them now. Phones and tablets, and I got one of the Amazon Echo Shows that's got a camera on it, and anything that does proximity detection and all that.
It's just crazy, right? There's just no expectation of privacy.
Yeah.
Well, I think then that's a great segue into the other that podcast that you linked there about the tech support scammers. I did actually get to listen to the whole show today. Like you said, it was not the boring normal stuff, and I got pretty engaged and can't wait for the next part of it. Quite frankly.
Yeah. So this is a podcast called Reply All from Gimlet. I've never listened to it. A buddy of mine linked it up last week, and I listened to it. And again, and I feel like we have to give this qualifier, because you think you know what it's going to be about, and that's super boring. You're not going to listen to it, but it doesn't end up being that at all. And what it is a guy that got one of those random phone calls that, you pick it up and hey, your IP address has been detected and your machine has been compromised. Please call us at 1-888 blah, 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 and we'll fix your stuff up. We've been getting those things for 10 years. This guy, though, he's a journalist. He does a podcast. He's like, sure, what the heck? So he calls them, but what he doesn't do is just call them and screw with them, because we've all seen those videos. They're all over YouTube. That's been done 1,000 times. That's boring. because he's a journalist, he gets curious about like the whole business model and like what these people are doing and what's going through their heads. And he calls them a dozen, probably dozens of times, and just starts figuring out like who owns the business and what the play is and all that. And it is just infinitely fascinating. I would love to get into it more, but I don't want to spoil any of it for anybody that's going to listen to it. So next week, we will talk about this week's, and again, Shane's already mentioned that it's a two-parter, so definitely be looking for it this week. But we will talk about it. But it was deeply fascinating.
Yeah, it really was, right? And I think the most impressive thing is, it starts out, he's like, hey, I got this call in January. I'm like, wait a minute, it's August. Why in the world do. But then when you get the whole story, like you said, he went through so many iterations that it really did take him 6 months of work to, get it all together. So I was shocked. I don't know, I'm hoping this is a segue where you tell me you're going to start doing this type of stuff for our show, cutting edge research and all that fun stuff. It was pretty awesome.
So it's funny. I don't have the stomach for it. And I know that I don't have the stomach for it because I'm not making this story up. I bet 17 minutes after I finished listening to that podcast, I got a call like that, but it was, hey, we got your phone call. You need some help with your student loan debt. This is your final call. If you want to talk to a representative, hit 1. I don't have any student loan debt. I haven't had any student loan debt in 15 years. But I'm like, I could do this. Oh yeah, there's no way I'm gonna do this. And I just killed it. So I just don't have the stomach for it. But this guy does some incredibly clever things. I don't want to spoil it, but there's one piece where he's trying to move the story forward a bit and he can't figure out a way, and then he figures out this brilliant way to do it. And I'm like, oh my God, I love that. That is so brilliant.
Yeah, well, it was one of the random producers, right? One of the interns figured out how to do it.
Yep.
And he gave them credit. Like you'd be like, yeah, I solved it myself. Intern who?
Exactly. That's exactly what I do. I would, but yeah, just again. So it's a story. It's not the whole just screwing with scammers thing. And also part of that is, you mentioned I should do this as research for the show, and Dave Aykroyd brings up the fact that we don't do any research for this show. So that's just completely ridiculous.
Well, and I also like the fact that Daniel Glenn is now listening to the Reply All podcast. He's told us to shut up so he can concentrate. So we'll have a moment of silence here so Daniel can enjoy the show.
Our apologies, Daniel. You're absolutely we're interrupting a much better podcast. We feel terrible.
Ain't that the truth?
But yeah, that was an interesting one. By all means, check it out. Good stuff. Another link that I saw linked up this week, and I can't remember where it was on LinkedIn or something. Being an unemployed guy, I spend a lot of time on LinkedIn these days. But it was a story about service level agreements. And this is something that Shane and I talk about all the time when we do presentations and teach our class and all that. But it's more of the things that we forget about when we're setting up our service level agreement. And, he and I always talk about things like, you can't have a restore time objective of 2 hours if it takes you 4 hours to restore your tapes. There's just things of that. But this article on minionware.net takes it a step further and brings in even more pieces that we had never thought about. So if you're an IT person and you're responsible for backups and restoring and fixing things and all that, take a look. We'll have a link in the show notes, but take a look at this article because I guarantee you there are things in there that you haven't considered that will negatively impact expectation setting should something happen. So I like the article.
Yeah, and that's really the big thing we always kind of push on people, right? Is they got to be practical, they got to be actionable, they got to be something you can actually enforce, and they got to be written down somewhere. Because too often your SLAs and those type of agreements, they're really, we got this formal thing over here, but we got kind of a wink and a nod agreement that it's really this, and that just doesn't work. You gotta deal with it.
Yeah. Another procedural thing, but very in the wheelhouse of what we talk about. Troy Hunt, TroyHunt.com. He's a fellow MVP. I think he's down in Australia. Writes a bunch of really great security things. If you're not following him on Twitter and all that kind of stuff, you should do it. But he published an article last week about passwords and kind of how passwords have evolved. And there was a bunch of really good stuff in there about how we're kind of moving past passwords, how that whole thing has evolved, and we can't keep this paradigm that we had from 30 years ago about how passwords work. And as somebody who is on the business end of having to come up with passwords and all that, and then somebody who's on the other end of having to craft these policies, this article, like everything that Troy writes, was a really good read. So again, as an IT pro, as somebody who used to be an on-prem IT pro kind of person, and you're looking to what your next job is, Shane and I have been saying it for years now, identity is part of that, and this fits squarely into the identity piece of what you're going to do. And I think he mentions NIST's paper that they published here a month or so ago. He references some things in that.
Yeah, well, remember we broke the news on that back in podcast 343. We said, hey, this NIST thing, you guys should go read it. So really, Troy probably watches our show, went and read the paper based on our recommendations, and then he wrote this. So.
Big shout out to Troy, a longtime listener, I'm positive. He brings out some interesting things, and again, his paper is long and it's got all kinds of really great things. But one of the things that he mentions is that we should not think of authentication as a binary. So it's not about are you logged in or not, but he talks about how there are different trust levels, like the circle of trust, but then there's many circles of trust. And I experienced that myself today. So one of the things he talks about is, maybe when you log in, you're authenticated, but kind of like Amazon does, Amazon will let you log in and do some stuff, but there's certain things, if you try to do them, it makes you log in again. So you've kind of got the various circles of authentication. The other thing that a lot of places will do is they will let you in if you're from a known IP address. If you come from an unknown IP address, they will let you in, but only to certain things. So this evolution that authentication is not binary is a good idea. And like I said, I experienced that today. I've got some VPN software and I was poking around and I accidentally hit a Microsoft site while I was coming out of a VPN endpoint out of country, and it let me in, but I immediately got an email that said, hey, I got a login from you from, Elbonia. Is that cool? And had it not been cool, I would have been able to act on it, but I was able to do what I needed to do.
Elbonia, is that one of those places, the mac and cheese box? Is that what that is?
That's the fictional country in Dilbert.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Yeah, it's, and with the password stuff, it's interesting as, the world tries to adapt to exactly what you're talking about. So things like, when you do more secure transactions, maybe we need to ask you again and that type of stuff. Great example of messing that all up, though, is like my bank software. So to get on to the mobile app, right, it's now just my fingerprint. I said yes, just my thumbprint. Let me get in there. And so it'll revalidate for certain transactions. But one of those revalidation transactions is doing a mobile deposit. I'm like, I really don't care if a bad person wants to steal my phone.
Anybody. Yep.
Oh, so it's still a battle, I think, even for the professionals to find that right mix of too much but not enough.
Yeah, so in all, that's an easy one to mock, but in all seriousness, if you deposit a phony thing, you get charged fees. So I'm sure that's why they do it. Like if I write you a bad check and you cash it, you get charged the fee, not me, because I got no money, so they can't get me. So that's probably one of the reasons that they do that. Yeah, so that's a really good thing. Another thing that he mentions in here is that there should be no restrictions on the characters in passwords. And he breaks down some of the things, like some passwords can't have spaces and some passwords can't have certain escape characters. And he breaks down why every one of those is a stupid barrier. Because he's like, you can't have passwords that have this in it, but you should never be putting this password in this form in a database. And so it shouldn't matter if it's got escape characters for SQL, because it never gets past the SQL like that. The app does something with it long before it gets to SQL. So all kinds of things like that. He also mentions that you can't have emojis in passwords in most cases, and you should be able to, which is ridiculous. But he talks about how, they're just Unicode characters. There should be no reason why you can't have all Unicode characters as part of your password.
Wouldn't that be fun? My password is heart eyes with monkey butt and a smiling
poo figure.
Yeah, the poop one.
Yeah. So he makes some really good points. So another one that I really loved was he thinks that every place that lets you change your password, including Active Directory, should always have a list of common passwords that crackers use, and check every time somebody changes their password against that list, and never let you set your password to something that is in a hash table somewhere. I'm like, I love it.
I mean, yeah, it makes sense. So I'm still hung up on this idea of making my password emojis. I want to know the first service that lets me make it. And you guys all know it. It's gonna be hard eyes with monkey butt, followed up by some poop.
Yep. And so, talking about the authentication thing, I got the new phone here a month or so ago. I've been using Android Pay, and I'm on a mission to use Android Pay every single place that I can. Every single place there's a credit card reader. But that process is clumsy because of authentication. So I need to unlock my phone to use it because I don't walk around the store with my phone, messing with my phone. So I have to unlock the phone with my finger, and then I have to open the app, hold it to the reader so that the phone and the reader know the thing. But then before I can make a payment, I have to unlock it again with my finger. And then it's kind of a clumsy thing. And I get why they're doing it. It's, it's my money. But that's another one of those crappy things.
Yeah, no, it's fun. I have to say that I have become a big fan of the touch of unlocking the phone, right? The fingerprint or whatever. I thought the Microsoft Hello with the stare into my eyes was pretty cool, but then I gotten real used to just sticking my finger on the phone and being like, "Yep, let me in."
I like that. I've got the Galaxy S8, and the fingerprint reader is on the back now, and I find that to be a gigantic pain in my butt. So it used to be on the front, which I assume is where it is on your phone, but there's no buttons on the front now. It's on the back next to the camera, which sucks.
Yeah, I mean, I think about how many times my phone's laying there and I just reach over and just touch it. Yeah, so you'd have to roll it over, touch it, and then roll it back over, and it sounds like we're talking about something else now. Yeah, that just doesn't, it wouldn't work.
Yeah, like my phone sits in a dock all day, and I can do things to keep it from unlocking, but yeah, so now it's in the dock, so I either have to type my thing or I have to sneak my finger on the back, which again sounds like a different podcast entirely. So I just that's anyway.
Yeah, it's good stuff. The password stuff, I hope it continues to get better, and people continue to listen to really smart people like that. Trying to move the ball forward one little roll at a time.
Yeah, and Troy Hunt, he also has a website, and I forget it, haveibeen.pwn.com or something, I forget what it is. But every time someplace like Ashley Madison or whoever has a big breach, he grabs all that stuff and has a website where you can search for your email addresses and all that. So there's good stuff there.
How often do you find yourself?
I use a domain that's anonymous for all those things. So, and don't act like you don't know. Don't act like that.
One of the startups I work with, they were they're trying to set up their trial process and all that, and the poor guy was like, "Yeah, I wrote all this code that people couldn't use those anonymizer websites, right? There's one like sharks with laser beams or something like that, and there's those websites where you can just create an email address, send something to it, and then watch it feed across the screen and grab the email you want there." And I'm like, dude, you are fighting a losing battle if you think excluding 50 domains is even making this anything more than just a fun game for these people to get through your stuff.
Yeah. New tech news. We've talked about this in the past, but not a lot lately. The Windows 10 Insider program and the fast rings and all that. If you have signed up for that, if you've got Windows 10 on your client, and everybody does these days, if you go in, you can sign up for the fast ring and you get the update sooner. And last week they released what will be the Fall Creators Update, the poorly named Fall Creators Update. And so you can get that. I've updated most of my boxes by now, and I think it's all gone pretty well. One of the things that they added was something that they promised they were going to add in the last Creators Update in April, but didn't make it. And that's the ability to link your Android phone to your PC. But it sucks. And so folks, that have Apple phones and Apple machines have had the ability to send SMS messages on their Mac devices for about 17 years, something like that. So the idea being you get your iPhone in your pocket, your mom sends you a text that shows up on your Mac, you use your keyboard and type a message and you do things that way, iMessage. But we folks with the Android phones and Windows boxes have not ever had anything quite that easy. There's a bunch of third-party stuff, but it doesn't work very well. So that was one of the things that was supposed to come in the fall, didn't come in the spring, didn't come in the spring. So the fall they talk about it again, but it still doesn't show up. And so right now the only thing that you can do with this thing is send web pages to your PC from your phone. So it's really odd. So the idea, I guess, is that if I'm looking at a web page on my phone, that I can send it to my PC and view it there. Limited use, but the thing is, if you're using Chrome on your Android device, like everybody who has an Android device is, it already does that to your PC. It already syncs all of that across. So I can, on both of my machines, my phone and my desktop, see the tabs that the other one has opened. And so if I'm on my desktop and I'm like, oh, what was that thing that I couldn't look at on my phone? I can already do that, and vice versa. So I don't know, disappointment once again.
Well, I mean, I think the good news though is they've bridged the gap, right? That's step one, right? Bridge the gap, make the two devices talk together in some meaningless way, but hopefully it's opening the door to them rolling out new features for that pretty fast now because they've done the hard part in theory.
Yeah, and back in the day when I had Windows phones, one of the features that I absolutely adored was this idea that if I had my Windows 8 laptop and I was someplace, I was in a hotel or at a conference or something, and I tried to get on the internet, if I had Bluetooth to my phone and my PC and had tethering enabled on my phone, my PC would Bluetooth over to my phone and say, wake up, buddy, I need me some internet. It would automatically turn on tethering on my phone. So, I mean, that's useful stuff. But the webpage thing's very frustrating. So hopefully they will trickle out some more stuff. But outside of that, there's a whole bunch of new things that they add. Check those out. Again, I've updated most of my PCs, and I think it's all been pretty rock solid.
Yeah. So speaking of new things that Microsoft has added, just today I got notified that they've added a couple of new VM sizes for good old Azure, right? The infrastructure as a service stuff that we keep saying is going to die, but they keep having to roll out new VMs because there's a lot of people that are building a lot of VMs out there.
Yeah.
So it looks like there's a DV3 series and an EV3 series. Very, very easy roll off the tongue type of names.
Oh, yeah.
But they're for memory optimized workloads, and I don't know, something like 64 vCPUs, Broadwell processors, 432 gigs of RAM. I mean, goodness gracious, it's there are clearly some people that are running some gargantuan workloads out there in Azure.
Yeah, I've got more PCs and tablets and laptops than any four men probably need. And I don't think I have 432 gig of RAM in my entire house. And I mean, and that's a lot. So yeah, I think you're right that this is showing that the underlying infrastructure that they're using must be massive. I mean, we've seen kind of what it takes on the back end to offer these things on the front end. So now just imagine the iron that they've got behind all this.
Yeah, I wonder if they finally figured out how to do some shenanigans, right? Because I mean, if you think back to when we were looking at that Gen 1 stuff around, public cloud and IaaS, and it was essentially like, yeah, we got this 64 gig server over here, and we can give out 31 gig VMs and 15 gig VMs, because we're always reserving a little bit for not a little bit, quite a bit, quite frankly, back. But I mean, it was really just stacking VMs on there, and I'm guessing it's just gotten a lot more complicated than that, or they got some really big machines laying around doing nothing.
Yeah. Ooh. Yep. So that's pretty cool stuff. And again, yeah, I agree with you that IaaS is going away, and probably a short term as opposed to a long term thing. But that short term still got a lot of legs, so it's good that they're investing in it.
Absolutely. All right, let's see. So 538.
The last three are yours, big guy. So you can pick which ones you want to hit.
All right, we'll talk about SharePoint thing. We'll see what that goes. So last week had a SharePoint support call on some issues with some My Sites. Guys like, stuff's just broke. I don't want to fight with it. Just fix it for me. I'm like, it's what I do. But it was really interesting. We got in there, and essentially, My Sites worked for his account, for a couple other accounts, and then everyone else, when they went to create their My Site, this was SharePoint Server 2016 on-prem, when they click on their OneDrive for Business, which was their My Site, it would just kind of say, hey, getting things ready. And it would just never stop getting things ready for those poor people. Wouldn't kick any errors, no correlation IDs, nothing helpful like that. Just kind of hung up. So we go look over in the user profiles for them in Central Admin, and it would show for their URL for their my site location as SPS error. I'm like, well, that's a good sign. Something's broke. So, I did some of this, I did some of that. I'm like, well, because the guy set it up himself. So I'm like, all right, let's go look at the basics, make sure you didn't, set up your user profiles wrong. We went through all that. I'm like, all right, well, that's not it. So we got creative so we could dig through the logs. Didn't really help. Finally tripped over something about the database. I'm like, let's go look at your content databases for my sites. Well, this poor dude had, been doing his SharePoint homework, and he'd read the stuff that said, with your content databases, you want to make sure you limit the number of site collections that can go into each one, so you can kind of scale and do and control that.
Yep.
Like, yep, that's solid advice. Well, when he was doing it for all of his content, he also did it for his My Site host. He went in there and said, my site content database can have exactly 20 site collections, and then he just kept going.
And how many people worked there?
Yeah, hundreds, maybe short of 1,000.
All right.
So yeah, it turns out once SharePoint gets to 20 site collections in a database that can only hold 20, SharePoint doesn't really know what to do anymore. In the old days we got some solid error messages from that, but now they've tried to hide all that with that happy experience of just hang back, Bucko, I got you covered.
That is an actual SharePoint error message these days too. Hang back, Bucko.
Yeah, and so as soon as we flipped that switch, we went and kind of recycled everything. Son of a gun, if no longer it was just hanging out there. So just thought I'd throw that out there because I know a lot of people. There's a lot of different support options, a lot of different try this, try that. Yeah, try the basics before you try all those fancy authentication level rewrite your database scripts. Just make sure your database sizes are good. Yeah,
and that's an interesting one because there you were working against a couple of things there. Number one was the millennialization, the broization of the error messages is not helpful. The other thing is Microsoft over the last 3 versions of SharePoint has changed how my sites are built and has changed how what information goes into my sites because of scale and all these other things. So my sites aren't like a regular site collection and they don't get built at once. Pieces of them get built so that if there's a sliver of functionality that needs something that goes into a my site, that little piece gets built so that the thing can get done, and then it queues the rest of the building in the background. So we don't have this normal flow of site collection creation that we're used to, and you get these weird errors like that.
Yeah, and Bucko, that's a very so it's like moose caboose, right? Bucko, moose caboose. There's a very, very technical terms.
Yeah, I'm sure there's going to be one of those, what would your porn star name be? And I'm guessing somehow there's a way to get Bucko moose caboose out of that porn star name generator.
We got to move on. That's rife with errors.
All right. So again, the last couple of topics are all yours, big guy. So have at it.
All right. So then also another support call. I did a lot of support last week. I just, no, never mind. I did a lot of support calls last week. But so this one was with the App Store. So once again, SharePoint Server 2016 on-prem. She had built her farm with AutoSP installer, kind of plowed through all that. That had all got all the pieces out there, but the App Store just wouldn't work for her. It turns out after the fact, she'd renamed the web app that it was using, kind of redid the URLs, introduced SSL. She'd really kind of clicked all the buttons before calling me with this one. So we got to fight through that one pretty good. And, the SSL issues, I don't think there's anything new there, right? It's just a reminder that when you're doing SSL, you've got to either do the old, SNI stuff, the server name indicator, right? So you can kind of have multiple web apps running SSL. Or in her case, what she did was she ended up having a different IP address for each one of the other web apps. So we just bound each web app to its own IP and then set that up in DNS, which actually is a lot, I guess that's the more traditional way to go. I kind of like that way. We did have problems there, though. She added the IP address for the new one we were creating, and even though Windows would let us add it and everything seemed fine, IIS wouldn't take it, and we cussed at that for a long time. Well, it turns out someone else already had the IP address, so the reason IIS wouldn't let us use it is because IIS knew that wasn't a valid IP address, even though Windows said, oh yeah, you can have that IP address. So that was obnoxious. But I think the probably the best learning out of that, right? So the assumption in SharePoint 2016, a lot of the documentation, so like the documentation for setting up the App Store, assumes that you're using host name site collections, right? Unlike me, Microsoft's still kind of pushing this concept that that's the right way to go. And I know you've kind of moved to that dark side, and we'll save that debate for another day. But so she was not. She was using she was using path-based site collections. Well, in order to make path-based site collections work with the App Store, you've got to create a generic web app listening, on star, essentially. Yep. And then you just put a site collection there, just a team site collection. Doesn't matter.
It doesn't even have to have a template, actually. Just has to be enough for the virtual directories, yeah.
Exactly, yes. Right, something to catch that and go, oh yeah, you meant to send this over here, and then it redirects it to the right SharePoint place. So she did not have that configured, and nowhere in the documentation it said anything about it. Luckily, I was just reading through our good old trusty 2013 book, right? I don't know who wrote this book, but this thing is gold. This thing is still to this day a great book.
So when NASA sends, rockets and stuff into space, and they have Beatles songs and, episodes of Archie Bunker, that book should be in there. It should be one of the first things that aliens learn about us is that book.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, just all the answers to all the questions are in that book. But yeah, so that's where I found that. And so I did that. So we got through that. Still didn't work. Oh. Turns out after more digging through, but finally it started working enough I could get error messages out of it. Right up until this point, I couldn't even get it to give me an error message. A little more playing around. Turns out that they still use a proxy server there. I'm like, hey, is your proxy server doing this? She's like, no, the servers don't go through the proxy server. But you have a proxy server, don't you? Yeah. Yeah, your server's going through the proxy server. No, it's not. Okay, we're going to call this call over for today. You go do a little research, and it turns out that the proxy server. So that was like a three-headed monster that, quite frankly, I'm surprised I was smart enough to figure out what was wrong.
I can only assume that you read this story from somebody else and are relaying it as your own.
Yeah, I think it was that Troy Hunt guy. I think he thinks the SharePoint stuff too.
He's a Renaissance man, many talents.
Yeah, so that was a lot of fun, but it was interesting to have to kind of go back into the bowels of SharePoint and realizing that the broification of error messages is not helpful for guys like us who have to actually support these things.
Yep. All right, we've put it off long enough. Let's go ahead and talk about G.
Oh, I was going to let you not have to talk about G, but
I don't want to talk about G, but Lori wants to talk about G, and now Dave wants to know what G is, and I told him we were on I if that helped at all, but that didn't seem to help any.
So the good news here is that Friday I took the day off and I flew to North Carolina and I picked myself up a new car.
Yeah, beautiful state out here, North Carolina.
Yeah, it was. It was. They were very happy to see me there because I went there and I picked up a nice Model S Tesla. That's right. Todd's dream car is now mine and parked in my garage right now. So,
a car that I've been obsessing over for 2.5 years. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. It is there, and all I can tell you guys, right, as a bunch of fellow nerds, is this car blows my mind. All the cool stuff it does.
Yep. And so the funny thing about that, I mean, there's no surprise about that. Nerds have been spewing over this car for years. I'm one of them. So this purchase has actually been, a month in the making, something like that.
Yeah.
And so Shane and I were talking about this a couple of weeks ago, and of course, I start talking about Teslas, and I get all dumb and get all excited. And Shane's like, I really don't want one. This is kind of my wife's idea, and my birthday's coming up, and so she's like, but I could give or take. I really don't care. And I'm like, no, dude, they're super cool. He's like, shy. And so, yeah, now to hear him today, yes.
Yeah, I mean, that is, so Tesla's biggest problem, right, is they need more people to go and ride in one for an hour. And I don't know how anyone would ever say no to it, right? I mean,
and the funny thing is you've driven one, you've test driven one, and you still didn't walk away from it. that excited.
Yeah, cool. Because when you test drive, right, you got the dealer up in your business, and you're kind of a little weirded out by it. I mean, because
it's a little scary,
overwhelming. Yeah, it's not like a normal car.
Car is terrifying. So I've told the story. I test drove one a couple of years ago, and I floored it. And I, honest to God, thought I was going to lose consciousness. I thought I was going to pass out. I thought that car was going to kill me. Honest to God, yeah.
Yeah, and so that's the problem, right? Is you really need like an hour with it, and you need somebody to kind of walk you through it that you're comfortable with, versus the dealer who you're like, yeah, this guy's just trying to sell me something, and he's afraid I'm gonna hurt his car, and but. I mean, you get in there, once you start to appreciate it, like things like Summon, right? It's in my garage. I press a button and it opens the garage door, it backs itself out, and then closes the garage door, and autopilot. I mean, honest to goodness, people, this car literally drives itself. You get on the highway, press the button, you press the other button, and then you're like, I'll take a nap. The car's going to take care of it. I mean.
And that is also funny because Shane had, an 8-hour drive home Friday? And so I was talking to him on this drive, and I'm like, hey, have you tried the autopilot early? And he's like, I don't know. I don't really trust this. I'm like, nah, dude, I've driven him. It's cool. It's great. He's like, oh, okay. And my favorite part was, I feel like this is a trust fall sort of thing, but let's do it. But again, at the beginning of that drive, he was like, I don't think I trust this autopilot thing. And now to listen to him talk, it's amazing.
Yeah. Well, and it's one thing, right? So so on a highway, going expressway speeds, the cruise set at 70, right? All right, autopilot works. Yeah. But then, so now I'm starting to play with it. Like I'm driving up, kind of one of the main drags in town, right? So it's a 35, 45 type of mixed zone with lots of red lights and things like that. You just set the cruise, set the autopilot, and it'll speed up and slow down. It'll keep up with all those cars in front of you. And it just... It sometimes gets a little weirded out by different things. I mean, it's not perfect. It is not perfect tech by any means yet, but the amount of smarts it has for dealing with traffic and the stopping and the going, and right, because it'll literally come down to a stop at 0, and then light turns green, right? Then it goes back to take off, no problem. It's amazing.
So it can see the red lights and it'll stop you and all that?
So no, it doesn't see red lights. Well, it sees them. It doesn't stop for red lights and stop signs yet. But in like all these scenarios, I'm just following a car. Yeah. I tried it for a red light, and I was like, I don't think it's going to stop, and so I helped it out there.
Yeah. So red lights are an interesting one. I got a buddy that's got one, and as you have noticed, and as a guy that races motorcycles and all that, you love the acceleration and. So this buddy of mine is the same way, and he said one of the things that he noticed was other people aren't ready for that kind of acceleration. So when he's the first in line at a stoplight, when it hits go, he floors it, and he still has people trying to beat the red light. He's almost T-boned a bunch of people because the car moves so quickly when he hits it at the green lights.
Yeah, and that's the other thing, right? I'd driven one. I knew they were fast, right, quote unquote. But when you realize that my little 4-door machine up there, pretty much outruns any car on the road 0 to 60.
Yeah.
And right, you can argue, okay, there's some things that have got better 0 to 60 times, but those are with professional drivers on a drag strip, right? Optimal conditions. I mean, I just pull up to the stoplight and I just press the gas pedal and I go 0 to 60 in 4.2 seconds or whatever. I mean, every time, no effort, no thinking. It just does it. And that's the big difference between, my neighbor with a Lamborghini. He's like, oh, my car's faster. I'm like, yeah, your car might be faster with a professional driver, but not with you driving it.
And depending on which one he's got, you still might beat him a little bit, depending on where you're at. But the thing about that is, so the Teslas have super duper crazy acceleration, but they peter out pretty quick because they get hot. So you might beat his Lamborghini 0 to 60, or you might beat his Lamborghini in the quarter mile, but you go the full mile, he's going to smoke you because
absolutely.
Your Tesla's going to say uncle pretty quick.
Oh, 100% agree, right? But if you think about practicality, right? Really, it's 0 to 45 is, that's the world we live in.
Yep. And so we looked on the Tesla site today. The one that Shane got, the Model S 75D, has a 0 to 60 of 4.2 seconds, I think was the number that we saw.
Sounds right, yeah.
And just, I mean, if you just, again, I felt myself blacking out when I did it.
It's wild. The other really cool thing, right, is the fact that so the car uses the AT&T cell phone network. It's always on the internet, if you will.
Yep.
So, one of the nice things about that is you get all internet radio. So Slacker radio and TuneIn are really all you use. You don't mess with FM or using your phone or any of that anymore. You just use one of those. But the really neat thing about that, though, is I have an app on my phone that can control the car just as easy as, like the key fob or me being in the car. So, like, I'm sitting at dinner, and I'm about to get done, open up the app. I'm like, oh, look, it's 82 inside my car right now. Turn the air conditioner on.
Yeah, let's make that 72.
Yeah, so you walk out there, and there it is. The car's sitting there. It's all locked and happy, and air conditioner's running, though. And it's just wild. There's so much, just little things like that. They're just wild.
Yep. But I think the important thing is that it does not have automatic windshield wipers, which is kind of BS. And that's why I would never buy one, because, I don't want to get
So the good news is that the automatic windshield wipers are listed in the owner's manual. I'm like, I got one. It's not doing it. So the feature's supposed to be coming. But yeah, it's I don't know.
He's mad that he's stuck doing this damn podcast right now and he can't be out driving his car. I mean, that's where he's at now. Every minute he spends speaking to me is a minute he can't be in his car.
Yeah. I look forward to learning all the tricks, though. There's a lot more it does that I think the car's smarter than me, clearly.
Yeah.
The other weird thing, is there's no start button. So I've had keyless entry and keyless go, that type of stuff. Yeah, the fob stuff forever. But, part of that, you get in the car, you press the button, right, and it starts up. Well, this one, there is no start or stop button. There's no turn it on, turn it off. So you get in, put your foot on the brake, and it's ready to go.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then when you get done with it, you just get out. And it'll shut itself down when it realizes you're gone. I mean, so that's been really awkward. And we're wondering with the other car how many times we're going to leave it running because we're getting used to this not pressing buttons and stuff.
Yeah, the good news is your other car will be so freakishly loud because of the internal combustion engine that you won't forget to shut it off, because it will just be,
Yeah, deafening.
So, all right, we've gone over, and I hate hearing about you. You suck. I hate you because you have to have that car. So, all right. So we're good to go. I will put this out, and we got promotion. Let's talk about that.
Skip A.
Yeah. So the big thing is I'm going to be at Microsoft Ignite September 25th through the 29th. I'm going to be doing a session with Jason. I'm going to be doing some podcasting. I'm just going to be generally annoying people at Ignite. So I've already gotten some emails from folks that are going to be down there. If you're going to be at Microsoft Ignite, email me ignite2017@toddclint.com. That'll bubble it up so I can see it. And we'll get together. We'll do some stuff. And then I'm going to be at SharePoint Exchange Forum September 6th through the 9th, and the Thrive Conference in Slovenia November 8th and 9th. Hopefully to see you.
Very exciting stuff.
All right, folks. I will, Shane, I'll reach out to you tomorrow, but everybody else, have a good week, and we'll see you next Monday. Same time, same station.
See you.